Welcome to Lock It Down Sports. I'm your host, Locke Hoover. You can follow me on X at Lock It Up Media. That's Lock It Up Media on X. You can also check us out at E5280 Sports. That's E5280 Sports. And today on the show, how the college football landscape shakes up after this big one in Tuscaloosa is played on Saturday. A plan to bring in money to pay players, and what I saw in football this week. And that's exactly where I want to start. That big one in Norman last week in the SEC. First SEC big game, really. And that all kicked off with Tennessee and Oklahoma. And right off the jump, Tennessee's defense comes out, makes a statement, holds him to a fourth down at the 50-yard line. And you're like, oh, I'm liking it. Okay, this is a positive sign. This is a positive development. You know, we heard about it. We've seen it in the NC State game of, okay, you know, this defense has made progress. It looks better. It looks good. NC State, okay team. They might not be as good now after they just got blown out by Clemson last week. So you take that for a little bit more of a grain of salt, but up to that point, it was the best opponent Tennessee had played. Obviously, they're better than Kent State and UTC. So you saw them and like, okay, all right. First possession, Tennessee holds Oklahoma on a fourth down at the 50-yard line. Okay, all right. Then we move to the third possession for Oklahoma. Tennessee throws that pick, and it's like, oh boy. Let's see how much this defense can do. Let's see what they can do, how they can handle things. Well, once again, the Tennessee defense responded and helped out the offense, which got off to a little bit of a slow start. Usually those first two possessions, the scripted plays that Heupel draws up, touchdown, you know, or field goal or score at least. I mean, you see it time and time again. Motors down the field, hits your field goal, hits your touchdown, those first 15 to 20, 30, 15 plays or so. Tennessee's in the end zone, or they hit a field goal and they take the lead, or they tie it up depending on what their defense does, you know. Not so much the case, which is not normal, but it's a good developing thing we're seeing early on in this game from this Tennessee defense. I know it's weird to say. I struggle with saying it too, but it's a welcome development. So the offense too, and my observation, wasn't really able to capitalize on the first quarter with good field position. So they had 4 drives, and Tennessee was only able to convert a field goal. Not ideal, but the way that defense is playing, they can hold it off. So then they're starting to get the move offensively going a little bit, and just watching Nico's accuracy and arm strength is a welcomed sight. I mean, the trust from Nico that Heupel has, I think it's very evident there, a lot more than it was last year with Joe Milton. I mean, it was Tennessee's run game that set up the touchdown with the play action. As you see this, like this, and their first touchdown, the safety was looking in, took a step or two, and just like that, Thornton gone with the touchdown. It was the run game that was getting going, but the accuracy and throw of Nico has been really impressive. I mean, the run was able to set up that drive on offense. So that's the first quarter and what they're able to do. And what you see, you're like, this could be the development of something. So move to the second quarter, and they swap turnovers there at the end zone and over and the goal line. So that's pretty much a wash. Basically, that cancels out. Tennessee's drive-in turnover. Oklahoma turns it over right back. But once again, that's been the theme of this game, as the defense is able to step up and respond. Turns the ball over, and it's back to their ball. Now, I think another interesting development in this game is just how deep they are and how much confidence they have in their other running backs. We know Sampson's the guy, but I wonder if there's been a little bit of a shift for that second running back spot in Dean Bishop, who's looked good and is now, I think he might be the number 2 running back or the co-2 running back with Cam Solden when he gets healthy. Because we didn't see Cam at all in the Oklahoma game. In those first 2 games, he was pretty much the number 2 back. And then obviously in that bowl game against Iowa, it was him and Sampson. Bishop redshirted last year, Sampson sophomore. So, yeah, there's going to be back and forth. I mean, those were the only 2 running backs we saw. Sampson and Bishop against Oklahoma. Peyton Lewis didn't even get in, the true freshman. Cam Solden didn't even get in. Maybe he was nicked up. But he's got this week to recover from a bye week. Then you've got Bishop, who's looked really good, ran tough and ran hard in this ball game. He's might be the number 2 back now, but that's a very, I think, still fluid situation. I thought a little bit in the second, the O-line struggled to protect Nico. I did 2 strip sack fumbles. Now, some of that could have been they were down to their third left tackle. As Hurd wasn't able to play in this game, so they had to shuffle things around. Davis was in there at tackle. And then Larry Johnson came in as well, who's a good run blocker, pass blocking work in progress. So that's kind of like, that might have been some of the issues with that strip sack fumble there and the line struggling to protect Nico a little bit. One thing I did like in that half, in that quarter, UT was able to run the football. That touchdown, half was runs. And that, to me, that's big. You're working on clock, and it shows me you can drive the ball right down their throats on the ground. And that's big. I think that's important for Tennessee. That's really what they are. They want to run it north and south and stretch you vertically. And the vertical threats, it's big, as we saw that in the third quarter on that big play by Brew McCoy to set up that field goal. So third quarter, that field goal, it felt safe for them to go up 22-3. But the way this game was going, the way it was transpiring, you felt like a field goal, get some points, and that's good. It's once again there, Heupel trusting his defense, trusting his eyes, and Tim Banks, what he's seen all game with that defensive line getting after the quarterbacks at Oklahoma, whether it's Arnold or Hawkins. Either one. So that's really your third quarter big play, kind of working some of that clock, which is nice to see. Tennessee can do that now. In the past, I don't think they were capable of doing that. Now, they have been. And then we get in the fourth quarter, and there I saw some things on X, things on Twitter earlier saying, wow, Oklahoma really came back, really got close in that fourth quarter. Yeah, it was a 2-score game. But it wasn't even it wasn't really even close. If it ended up being scoring up being a lot closer in the game, and and Heupel, you even saw he took off the gas. He took his feet off the gas, and he even said as much in his audio sound mic on the sidelines. You could see him talking to Nico, say, "Hey, good job." Basically, I let off a little bit the way the defense was playing. Nico, just be smart, hand the football off, work the clock, and let your defense go to work. And that's exactly what they did. And it showed too. I couldn't tell you the last time. I'm sure it's happened before, but in a big game, very rare. Tennessee wins the time of possession. They won it 35-24. 35 minutes, 41 seconds to Oklahoma's 24 minutes, 19 seconds. Rare. That's odd. And I think it's a good sign for Tennessee for what they can do and what they can bring. Now, this is by far been the best defense at Tennessee under Josh Heupel. And first big game, kind of curious to me how deep they were on the defensive line. You hear it all offseason, oh, we're deep. This is the deepest we've ever been. We're going to play a lot of guys, and then it's like, oh, okay, you play 7, or 6, right? Basically. No. They're a deep line, and they trust their defensive line. They had 10 deep rotating. And I believe Tennessee is comfortable going deeper than that, really, if they have to and they need to. And I think depending on the game and if it's hot, temperature-wise, they don't go to the swamp till later in the year, so obviously it's a little bit cooler. But Jason Jenkins only played 5 plays. And if you remember, he had that safety. He had the safety and the tackle for loss. And he only played 5 plays, so he really wasn't even part of the 10-man deep rotation. But I think Tennessee feels confident in giving him snaps. And also, too, Pro Football Focus grades people every game. There's some merit to it. So you can there's something to this. They rated 7 of the 11 top players were on the defensive side of the ball were defensive linemen. That shows you the depth and how comfortable they are rotating their defensive linemen. Now, you can't downplay this win anymore. Tennessee's still undefeated. This was a big win, and it matters in the overrun of the SEC and playoff potential. Now, Tennessee's sitting at your only humps are really Alabama and Georgia, which you'll get to play later on in the year. You get the pleasure, the opportunity, because you play them every year. Who knows how it'll be with the new schedules now with Texas and Oklahoma, if Alabama and Georgia are still a yearly thing. But that's where they're at. 10-2 is a very real possibility now. Maybe 11-1 if you can beat either Georgia or Alabama. But I think 10-2, that gets you into the playoffs. Saying you take care of your business against a Arkansas team that it's better. They're 3-1. They could be undefeated if it wasn't for the debacle that they had at Oklahoma State. Usually a physical team, the Sam Pittman team. Tennessee and Bobby Petrino out there calling the offensive plays. Should take care of them. But that's going to be a physical game. Then you've got Florida. For whatever reason, that game is never easy for Tennessee. Granted, it's at home in Knoxville, so that helps. But that Florida game still absolutely scares me. It does. Regardless of how much better of a team you are. We were better last year and lost. So that's where they're at. They are off week this week, 2 weeks to plan for the Hogs. And then you go and take on them in Fayetteville. Another important game. Every game is important. Shouldn't take off the gas. Should be okay. But it's, as they say, another week in the SEC. And we got a big one in the SEC we'll get to a little bit later on in the show. Another game, Monday Night Football. Excuse me, Sunday Night Football. Falcons Chiefs. I love the first drive for the Falcons. Drove right down the field. Very impressive. And I thought they didn't run the ball that much in that first drive. But the threat of Bijan Robinson, I think allowed for the play action to open up for the DBs to stop maybe half a step. The wide receivers get open, London and Mooney, and that's your touchdown. And they look good. I liked the flow, what they were doing that first drive. Then we get to the second quarter. And there's some good and some bad with this. The bad, Falcons had trouble getting off the field. To me, the good was it forced Kansas City to go 13 plays. 13 plays. I like that math and that generally because 13 plays is it's tough to sustain a drive. Yeah, you got one of the best quarterbacks around in Patrick Mahomes, but still, for everyone to play 13 plays, drive down to hit a field goal, it's that bend don't break defense, and it's tough for offenses to sustain long drives. So, on one end, it's frustrating. By the other end, okay, you make them work all the way down the field. You don't give up a big play to the end zone and back at it. No. I did think the O-line was having trouble protecting Kirk Cousins. And that showed. And I was wondering if that offense is going to adjust the play calls, how they're going to play with two linemen out. And I think it might have affected their rushing game a little bit as Robinson, he couldn't do anything all game at all. So he had under like 60 yards, something like that, 50 yards, something like that, on 15, 16 carries. So obviously not very good. Ajir couldn't really get anything going either. And that's an issue because they love to run the ball. And they've got two good backs that can do it, but they couldn't do it. Now, third quarter, once again, some good and some bad. Kansas City only scored 9 points in the quarter. That's a win for the Falcons defense. You keep Mahomes 3 field goals in that offense, you take that. So it's on the offense to do something. And they didn't, and they couldn't. They couldn't really sustain anything, but they're still in this football game, right? They're still in the football game. So we move to this fourth quarter, and late in the game, it's fourth down with about 4 minutes left. I'm fine with the Falcons going for it there on that fourth down play. Why? Here's why. Say if you kick the field goal, you're down 2. Okay, you're down 2. Kansas City drives down the field, kicks a field goal with who knows what time is left. You're down 5. So you still need the touchdown. Well, now, with that score, you would need to go for the touchdown, the 2-point conversion anyway. So I was fine with it, with how it played out as far as the Falcons going for in that fourth down with the clock. With the clock where it was, where you were on the field, I was fine with it based on the numbers and how the score was and how it lined up. It made sense. They just didn't execute, and they couldn't obviously pull it off. So it was tough loss, 1-2, and you got a battle now. Obviously, it's a battle. Every week's a battle, but that's where you're at. South Division still very much in play, and on to next week, right? You got to see what happens with the offensive linemen, how they're going to replace Dahmer as they put him on IR, how the O-line's going to be able to handle that, replace the center spot. It's not an easy task, but it's that next man up mentality. In the NFL, of course, no one's going to be sorry for you, and that's what it's at. And on to next week. Now, this was, I guess, released 2 weeks ago now. What they're doing in Knoxville, University of Tennessee, has come out and said they're raising ticket prices because they want some of that money, that percentage that they're raising, is going to their players. At least they're honest with it. And they said, we're raising ticket prices. And you know what? It's going to pay our players next year. I think they're straightforward. I think it's very commending of them that they are straightforward with that, as opposed to, we're just going to raise ticket prices. Why are we raising ticket prices? Because we've been successful these last few years under Josh Heupel. Ticket sales have been sold out. We've sold out our home games, so therefore we can raise ticket prices. That all might be true, and it is true, but they're being transparent about it. Know why we're raising prices? Because we got to stay competitive. We got to stay ahead of the game to make you want to come back and spend your money and watch this team play. We got to keep up. NIL is here. That's what it's about, and that's how it works and it operates these days. Because if they regularly don't put on a good product on the field, fans aren't going to show up. I mean, that's almost the price of admission when you've got a good football team, baseball team, basketball team, whatever. Ticket prices are going to go up. The dynamic ticket pricing thing, fluctuates on opponents and location, where and how your team is doing. That's part of it. That's part of all sports. And this won't be the last time you hear about this, you see about this in college football, I don't think. Tennessee's just the first to openly say, yeah, we're raising ticket prices, and here's why we're raising ticket prices. So that money can go to our players so we can keep up in the NIL arms race that is college football these days, to go get and keep Nico, to go keep that next 5-star quarterback, that 5-star receiver, that 5-star offensive lineman. Those things cost now. Free agency isn't cheap in college football. We need the money, and we thank you for continuing to help us, shall I say, bring in those types of players. You want a good product? Usually good teams' tickets aren't cheap. And that's where Tennessee's trying to get. And that's where they're trying to be a national championship contender. Yeah, they might be a playoff contender, but what's the next step, right? Playoff contender is getting in, and it's like, okay, heck yeah, hallelujah. Then it's we're in the championship competing business, and that's where Tennessee wants to go, continue to try to go and build And that's part of it, the NIL and their collectives and paying players, and that's where college football is at these days. And speaking of college football and where it's at with this playoff, Alabama, Georgia. What does this mean? It's going to be a good game. I think the spread I saw was 1.5 by 1 at one of the books. It's kind of all over. 1.5, I think Georgia's 1.5 point favorite. And it's the first time I think Alabama's been a home underdog in maybe Saban's first year or maybe before Nick Saban. So it's been a hot minute, obviously, since they've been a home underdog. Should be a dandy. Grand scheme of things, what does this mean? I think it only means one thing. Who potentially gets to play a 5? That's it. That's all this game means. It's not, oh, this team's got one loss. They might not make it to the playoff. No, they're both in. Put it in pen. It's who potentially plays in the SEC championship game and who potentially wins the SEC championship game and gets a bye. That's it. Because the other contenders right now are you got Texas, Tennessee, and Ole Miss. And kind of Missouri if you really want to get cute with Missouri. But that's it. And Tennessee's a non-factor in this because they play both Alabama and Georgia. So you know where that sits. You've got Texas and Georgia playing coming up. So that's another matchup. But that's it. I think both these teams are getting in, obviously. And it's no shoe-in. Shoot, they might be playing for the SEC championship again. They might score off for a second time. Depending on how things shake out with Texas and Georgia and Alabama. That's it. I mean, which sucks. It really does. It's unfortunate to not get as excited about this game as you potentially could. It's cool. That's exciting. They're playing. We could see this matchup 2 more times, you know? Potentially a SEC championship game, potentially a playoff game. So, cool, right? 2 good teams, hard to beat each other multiple times. That's where they're at. That's where we're at with college football. And it's unfortunate. It is. With this 12-team playoff and what it means for the regular season. But Georgia, Alabama is now cool. But it's not the end-all, be-all as it has in years past to determine the overall big picture. As always, you can follow me on X at Lock It Up Media. That's Lock It Up Media on X. You'll be listening to Lock It Down Sports. I'm Locke Hoover. I'll talk to you next week.